And we're back with the lunar occultation of the planet Mars. Sorry for the technical issues there. Had to go out into the cold and refocus the telescopes and get the computer rebooted and all that kind of stuff. So for those of you that are just starting to come back, right now the moon is hiding or occulting the planet Mars. And in a little bit less than an hour, we will be able to see Mars emerge on the right-hand side of the moon. If you've been out there with your binoculars or just watching with your eyes, that's sort of what you can see. And so in the meantime, we'll just take a little view of some of the sights on the moon here. Still with us is Chris Kerwin from the Sunday Night Astronomy Show. Great to have you here, Chris. Yeah, no problem. You got some nice scopes in the background there, I see. Yeah, it's nice to have a few, a selection of things, the right tool for the job, as they say.
Never let your wife sell your telescopes for what you say you paid for them.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. So I noticed that you've got a bunch of different ones there, but there's a couple of nice small ones there. But what's your primary scope you're using right now?
Right now, the primary scope I'm using is just like your little 3-inch refractor. And I think it's because the idea about telescopes is not because it's not all about size. Maybe when you start out, it is, you get started with a small scope and you want to go bigger and heavier, and then all of a sudden you find out that you're not getting outside on those clear nights because it's just too much work. Maybe you have a full-time job and you just have a half an hour and you want to take a peek at the moon or the Pleiades star cluster or whatever, and you just don't go out because it's just too much work to set up. So I'm finding I'm going the other direction, and a lot of people who've been in the hobby for a while will start to do that. They'll start to become an astronomy minimalist, I'll call it. They size down because it's much easier to carry equipment outside. So, for instance, this little tabletop zooming telescope that's back here is probably one of my favorite little telescopes. This little 4.5-inch tabletop Dobsonian, and it rotates back and forth and up and down, very simple movement. So nothing really to learn about it except know where to put your pointer and find your object, make sure that your pointer is looking at the eyepiece at the same time, same target, and there's your mirror. So nice little lens. It gives you a nice little view of the moon, the Pleiades star cluster. Lots of deep sky objects can be found with it as well. And it packs up really nice and neat. You can build your own homemade tripod for it as well to set it on. There's a guy that I follow, David Fuller, who has a site called Eyes in the Sky.
Mm-hmm.
And he designed this a tripod that has a piece of 3/4 plywood on the bottom and 3 pieces of 2x4. It folds up nice and easy. It's about $20 to build.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more now with lumber costs.
Yeah.
But very simple to use, and it makes a great scope for that purpose.
Yeah.
They're great beginner telescope, and I always recommend an Alta-S type of telescope for beginners.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's an easy way. You have to find things in the sky. It teaches you to learn about the night skies. So, you can all find the moon. You can find, tonight you find Mars right beside the moon.
Right.
So if you just start, exploring a little bit like that, little pieces at a time, you'll get to learn the night sky, and then you can switch over to something that's more computerized if you want.
Yeah. I've got a Star Blast like that one as well, and that was one of the ones that it became hard to get the last little while, but that was basically my number one recommendation when someone would say, "Hey, I want to buy a telescope. I've got a couple or a few $100 max. What should I get?" And I mean, for less than that, you can get into a decent pair of binoculars as well. And we've got a lot of active binocular observers here.
Binoculars are a great way to get started in the hobby. And learning the night sky, learning where constellations are. You find Orion, you find targets in Orion. Binoculars are a great tool because they're affordable, they're lightweight, they're easy to use, they're reasonably cheap. You've got a 3D view because you're using both eyes instead of one. You're using daytime for viewing. So they make perfect sense for a beginner, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you can give, the great thing about binoculars, they have such a wide field of view that you can give them to even a young kid, and you sort of you can't miss with them because you've got such a wide field of view. With a telescope, you're looking at such a small area. As we'll see, I'm going to switch over to our scope. Can you hear me out there? Okay. Oh, lost sound. How interesting. Okay. You should be able to hear me now. Can you hear me now? There we go. Oh boy, what a night. Is it Friday the 13th or something? I don't know. But so I'm just going to duck outside and give the telescope another little focus, and hopefully we'll be able to get that high resolution image back. I'm just going to see if I can log in and get all that going. And then, so I'll be back in just a moment. If you have any questions, feel free to toss them here into the chat, and Chris can answer them, or I can answer them when I get back, or whatever. Talk amongst yourselves, and we'll get a nice focused image in just a second.
folks. Hopefully you can hear me as well. Yeah, we're just waiting for Scott to get back here. Troubles with focus, and of course, in the cold weather, it's going to give you an issue. We all have experienced this before, and live is always difficult to keep things running. So, going great in Hampton. That's true. It is, you know, something. Technology's a wonderful thing right now. MB Guide, the fact that somewhere in Canada right now is a clear sky, like Scott has. So Scott has done the same with me as well. He's been clouded out and sent people back to me to catch an event. And that's where it's great to be able to have a community like this across the country, where you'll be able to find somebody at least that might have a clear sky, and we don't have to always miss out on these events all the time anymore. Scott did mention a little bit about the rarity of the event. I know that right now we're at a full moon phase as well. I believe the moon has just turned full. So here locally, I'll say in St. John area, the moon was going to be exactly full when it occulted Mars. So that I guess is a little bit more rare of an event. And the fact that the moon is occulting Mars when Mars is at opposition, very close to opposition, may be rare as well.
There we go. Still a lot of turbulence happening there, but we're getting a bit of a view. Let me just see if I can clean that up just a little bit. Maybe what we'll do here, let's go down just a bit. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I went out and it is beautifully clear, beautifully cold, and I am quite happy that I have come back inside because it was just a little bit too much. All right, let's see. NB guy, great to have access to this. Yeah, I'm glad we could be clear here and share it with you guys, because I know that Chris would have been out there viewing this and sharing it with his audience as well. Radiation Station 09, when is the return? We're looking at 10:15 Central Time. Should be the time that the return occurs. You can still see my glasses all fogged up. That's nice. Okay, so I think what we'll do here is we'll just move around using this system, which is just a little bit nicer here. Don't want to block the hole.
It's interesting too, Scott, is that we would have had a lot less of an occultation here in Atlantic Canada than you're getting in Winnipeg.
Oh yeah, right. It's a different view from everywhere around the country as to where the moon goes in and so on. You guys are quite a bit farther south than we are, I guess, hey?
Yes, we are.
What's your latitude out there?
45.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, we're down there.
Yeah, exactly. We're just south of 50, and actually, well, I spent some time out in the Maritimes, and even that little latitude change, I was surprised how much of a difference it makes in the way the sky looks. You know, it just looked different. Even the Big Dipper, you know, just the wrong angle. So, okay. Yeah, we have pretty much a central occultation here, which kind of means that we have the longest wait in between the disappearance and the reappearance. But oh well. So we're just going to scan around the moon here. So this is the 3-inch refractor that I pointed out earlier. Just a small little scope on a pretty nice mount. And what we've got is what's called a Barlow lens, which is basically a magnification tool that is magnifying the view 3 times. It's a 3 times Barlow that it basically goes in between your eyepiece and the telescope, and it doubles or triples, in this case, the power of any eyepiece that you stick in there. And it all does the same thing for the video camera. So it's giving us a nice high resolution, high magnification image. Now it looks like, I thought we'd be okay because of the cold temperatures, but you can see that making the image bigger doesn't always make it clearer. You know, we're seeing bigger detail, but it's shifting around. It's you know, only some moments of clear and then some moments of fuzziness and stuff like that. This happens in a real telescope that you're looking through as well, where people often think magnification is really important, but you can have too much magnification. I actually prefer a lower power view, like the binocular one that we're looking at kind of over here, because while it's smaller, it's nice and crisp and clear, and it's more aesthetically pleasing. You can still see the rippling around the edge of the moon there. There's still some turbulence and haze, but it's a lot more in the background. So not quite as, I guess, disruptive as it is on this view here. Having said that, when it does clear up, you do get that sort of flash of really detailed view, and it makes it nice to see. And you do occasionally get those nights where the air is so steady that you don't have that rippling atmosphere effect, and you can really crank up the magnification. Do you do, Chris? Do you do a lot of high power viewing, or are you more of a low power field of view kind of guy?
Oh, I'm a low power kind of guy. Yeah. I enjoy that much more. Again, like you say, the views are crisper, they're cleaner, and I'm like Mike Powell, buddy of mine, who's also very in Paul Owen as well. We're kind of getting back to wide field views. We like to see something around the object.
Yeah.
So we see the Pleiades star cluster. We want to see some other stars around it as well, or looking at a nebula and want to see other parts of it. Some of the objects that you want to see, like the Pleiades star cluster, are best viewed in binoculars.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I like having that sort of context around it as well. You can sort of see, the object in its place in the galaxy, rather than just sort of it by itself.
Or other galaxies when you're looking at,
right.
Say, M81, M82, or you're looking at M31 Andromeda, and you've got 110 and 31 right beside it as well. So. Right.
Yeah, I think actually fall is one of my favorite observing seasons because of there's a bunch of sort of galaxy. I guess spring is my galaxy favorite season, with all the galaxies there. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this thing going. Yeah, it is not happy. The telescope motors are starting to freeze up as well, I think. So I'm gonna get us to the area where the occultation is gonna reappear, and I'm maybe not gonna mess with it too much because I'm a little afraid of a major failure again. So yeah, we basically come out right opposite where it was that the planet Mars disappeared. We can barely hear Chris. Okay, let me see what I can do about that. Chris, why don't you just talk a bit?
Hello? Hello.
Okay.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4. How's that?
Oh, that's good. Oh, Frank. Hey, Frank. Nice to see you. Frank Florian from the Edmonton Planetarium, a colleague and friend of mine for many, many years. The sky cleared in Edmonton just before the occultation. That's the kind of weather change you would like to have. That's pretty crazy to have that. I've been in situations where the sky clouds over just before an event. In fact, that was actually the forecast for tonight. There was this little tail of cloud that was supposed to hit Winnipeg right at occultation time. It looks like it didn't happen, so that's good. But okay, Nicholas is asking how longish until it reappears. 10:15 is the time that it will reappear, and so we're looking forward to spotting that. But let's just move along the limb of the moon here. What I like about the high magnification view, if you look at the moon, you can see that it's covered with craters and mountains and all sorts of terrain. Even the edge of the moon is not smooth, but there's little bumps and all sorts of terrain along there as well. It really is a wealth of detail, and pretty much any telescope will show you a great view of the moon, and binoculars as well. You'll see a lot of the major features. And, you know, often astronomers tend to avoid the moon because when the moon is out on a full moon night, you're not going to see much else. You know, the galaxies, the star clusters, all of those faint, fuzzy things that we like to look at, well, the full moon ruins them because it's like city lights you can't drive away from. But on its own, it really is a spectacular object. And I like to rediscover the moon whenever there's an event like this, or just the, you know, the opportunity where it's just not clear during the new moon weekend or whatever. I like to just go back to the moon, even though it's, you know, I've looked at the moon, I don't know, hundreds of times through a telescope. It's still something that you discover something new every single time because it's just so detailed that you'll never run out of things to see on it. So as we go across the moon here, you can see basically the two different kinds of terrain. There's the light stuff, which is generally a bit more mountainous and you know, up and down. And then there's the flat gray areas, which some of the old star watchers thought were oceans and seas and things like that because they figured the moon was just like the Earth. And of course, once we look with telescopes, we realize these are just flat, rocky areas. In fact, they're places where lava has bubbled up from underneath the crust of the moon back in the old days, when the moon was just sort of forming. It had a molten core, and some of the big asteroids that would crash into the moon would punch right through the crust, and the lava could sort of then bubble up and fill these big depressions, and you get these very flat gray areas, which are still called the maria, or the seas. And in the wide view, that's what gives you the man in the moon. Now, when you look at the moon, I mean, some people see a face, some people see a rabbit. There's a woman in the moon. You can, you know, the human brain is predisposed to seeing faces and things, and so, you know, the moon is no exception. I always sort of think that, you know, this is one eye over here. Oh, can you guys see that? Maybe I should switch over to the other. There we go. One eye is sort of this Maria over here, and then this one over here is another one. And then down here is kind of the mouth. It's like the top lip and the bottom lip, and then the nose is kind of in here. I don't know what all this stuff is. But then actually one night I was out and I saw a different face in the moon, and this one's kind of a scarier one. You've got two eyes right on the limb here, and then you've got a big wide open mouth here screaming.
So see if you can find Wilma Flintstone.
Wilma Flintstone? I don't.
Seen Wilma?
Oh, okay. So is that her hair up there?
That's her hair up there.
Okay.
It's a profile pic.
Right. Okay. And yeah, now that you mention it, it looks exactly like Wilma Flintstone. So the Flintstones, for those of you that are young, was a TV show.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's hilarious. I've never seen that before.
There's a T-Rex there as well.
A T-Rex.
And a rabbit.
Well, the rabbit I've seen. There's a great Japanese folktale about the rabbit in the moon. This is the rabbit's head, and then the ears sort of go up over on the top there. I don't know.
So if you move them over a little bit more to center, you might be able to pick up more of the.
Yeah, let's bring that back over.
So top left there, I'll say, is the T-Rex's head. It's a big head. And then there's his body, and he's got these little arms sticking out. He's profile pic too.
Oh yeah, okay. So the sort of the jaws are like right in there, and
Yeah. And then he has this big tail up behind him.
oh right, that sort of stretches all the way up like that. Yeah, yeah.
And then the little dot down there in the corner,
Mm-hmm.
just under his tail, they used to call that dinosaur poo.
Oh, down at the bottom there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. There you go. You can see whatever you'd like to see in the moon, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's switch over. Since we've moved sort of onto the highlands of the moon here, you can see here. Let's adjust the contrast a bit. Wow, lots of
Hey,
turbulence.
hard to hear your guest again.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Not sure why.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Let's see if I can bring you up.
I'm pumped up as much as I can here.
Okay.
I'll just speak a little bit louder.
Okay, sure.
There. Okay.
Okay. Let us see here. Yeah, so we're about 30 minutes away from the reappearance, and we're just scanning along the moon here. Very rugged terrain. And back in the Apollo days, when they were, going to the moon and landing there were great debates between the engineers who wanted a nice, safe, flat place to land, and the scientists who wanted an interesting scientific place to land, like on top of a mountain or next to an old volcano or something like that. And the engineers and the scientists compromised by letting the engineers get everything they wanted. And most of the early landings were basically in the middle of a flat plain, near the center of the moon, very easy to handle. But towards the end of the Apollo missions, they started getting a little bit more adventurous, and they landed in some of the mountains and things like that, or at least near some of the mountains. So there was a little bit of terrain. But those early missions, they were really designed, let's get to the moon, let's grab some rocks, let's put up a flag, we'll win the space race. And there wasn't really a whole lot of like, okay, then what? Like, are we done with the moon? Are we never going back? And so here we are 50 years after Apollo 17, and still humans have not gone back to the moon. But Artemis 1, the test flight of the human spacecraft, is on its way home. It'll splash down in about 4 days down in the Pacific. It flew around the moon. If you're on the internet at all, you've seen the pictures everywhere, and it's pretty cool to think that that humans will be going back. And there's no Tim Hortons there yet. I actually figured it would be McDonald's beforehand, but just because that's a bigger American company. Canada generally tends to be, second or third in a lot of these space things. We get to go, but they're not our rockets, so we're kind of hitching a ride for our expertise. But in this case, the very next Artemis flight will have a Canadian astronaut on it. There are 4 active Canadian astronauts, and so we don't know officially which one is going to go. But my money is on Jeremy Hansen, because he's sort of the senior guy. And we'll have to see, though. He was just in Winnipeg a couple of weeks ago, actually. And nice to chat with him. Some of the Dome at Home folks got a chance to chat with him and see his presentation. Nice. Yeah, he's super nice. Well, they're all super nice.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they don't pick people that are jerks. I think that, in addition to being, a fighter pilot and an engineer and a scientist and a doctor and all these kinds of things, you tend to get people that are just very good at being able to relate to other people, because you don't really want to spend 6 months in a space station with somebody who's going to cause problems, right? So, all right.
We're more than 2 years on the way to Mars and back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, once we start going to Mars, I mean, I don't know. That's a long trip.
8 months, I think, isn't there, and then you're going to be there for a year and a half or so.
Yeah, before you can come back. Yeah. So Mars is at its brightest right now. It's at what we call opposition, and it's been sort of getting closer and closer to the Earth, and now it's sort of at its best, and then it'll fade away. And that happens every 26 months or so. So that's when you want to launch your space missions to Mars, because that's the shortest trip. And so if you're going to go to Mars, you can't do like the Apollo thing where you go there and you spend a few days and then you just come back. You're going for 2 years. It's like you're hitching up your wagon and going down the Oregon Trail kind of thing. And that's why it's so difficult, because, I mean, if you've ever packed for a car trip, imagine packing for a 2-year car trip. How much food do you bring with you? You know, how much water do you have to bring? Well, you can't bring enough. So that's the real limiting factor is how can we grow food on Mars? How can we dig down into the soil and find water there, and we can use water to drink, and then we can break it apart into hydrogen, which is rocket fuel, and oxygen, which we breathe. You really have to go and live off the land. And that's the technologies that will be required for Mars. But the moon, nice and close, I can't believe I'm saying this, relatively simple to get to, and relatively simple to come back from if there's any kind of problem. Yeah, the focus is slipping even more. I think what's happening, I think I might have cooked my electronic focuser. It's brand new. I've only had it a week, but but I think it has given up the ghost, and that's why we're losing the focus on the high magnification. So, well, also the turbulence is not working in our favor either, but I'm going to see if I can get it to work a bit. Oh, maybe. So the joys of urban observing, like normally if I go do an event like this, I'll go out to Birds Hill Park, which is a provincial park nearby, nice big open fields, relatively dark, and you know, you're not looking over your neighbor's house or their garage or anything like that. But depending on where I am in the backyard, I'm either looking over one neighbor's house or the other neighbor's house. All of the heat coming off that gives a bunch of turbulence. And I can see that the turbulence has really amped up in the last few minutes. And I think that that's because as the moon has risen, it is now directly over top of the chimney of my neighbor across the back lane. So unfortunately, we've got a little fuzzy view for a little bit here, but we're still 20 minutes or so away from occultation. So we should be clear of it by the time we get to the finale of our event.
And your little scope is giving a great view there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is a great example of why smaller scopes are sometimes better, is that the little scope is quite nice. It's literally just a little scope about this big. You use it as a finder scope and a guide scope. And it's great for sticking a camera in, but also just for looking at wide field objects. It's like half of a pair of binoculars, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those. Let's see. Yeah, no, the autofocuser is... I always call it an autofocuser, but it's not. It's an electronic focus so that you can focus without touching the telescope. And it's a really nice accessory. When I started using it, I was able to focus the telescope really nice and precisely without moving it. And just a wonderful tool. But like any tool, when it doesn't work, it just causes a problem. Let's see. Oh, Eric's saying, I think the first box store on the moon will be a Walmart or Costco. Yeah, you're probably right. It's pretty hard to, especially with the private companies now getting involved. You know, everyone was saying, oh, when private companies get involved in space travel, the prices will come down and we'll all get to go to space and things like that. And that hasn't really come about yet. I mean, certainly there's lots of private companies involved in space, but hasn't quite translated yet into the accessibility that some of us were hoping for. I still am hoping that, you know, before I am too old to climb into a rocket, I can buy a ticket in one to at least go up and see the Earth from space. I don't think I can. Oh, the focuser's working. There we go. Oh, nice. There we go. The current things are just a little out of my price range. I think a few $100,000 for a 15-minute suborbital trip. That's more than I can afford, unfortunately. I work for a not-for-profit, so. But you know, if the prices keep coming down, I would definitely go. How about you, Chris? You go into space?
Maybe. Maybe, yeah, maybe I'd go. I think I'd want to go.
Yeah. If I mean,
I'd want to see the Earth from space. That would be great to see,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
I think everybody should.
Yeah, that's the one common thing. I've had the chance to meet quite a few astronauts, and they all basically say, when you see the Earth from space, your life changes because, well, it's like that first picture of the moon, of the Earth from the moon. People saw that, and suddenly, the environmental movement was kind of coalesced all around that picture. Everybody suddenly realized, wow, this is our planet in space, and there's nothing to protect it except us.
Yeah, we saw it as a big ball in the blackness of space for the first time, and it led us to start to think of it as a global issue.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the big benefits of the space program. Even if you're not a big fan of rocks or science or medical advances or things like that, just the understanding of our own planet has been worth the price of admission right there, I think.
You can't see country boundaries from space.
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. So here's one of the big craters on the moon, nice and relatively fresh one because it's very light colored. The soil of the moon basically will tan in the sun, and so if you see something on the moon that is bright white, it's probably relatively recent, and then the darker things have been there sort of the longest kind of thing. And you can see the ejecta stuff splattered out from the central impact there. I'm terrible with names. I can never remember any of my craters' names. Is this Tycho, I think?
I think that's Tycho.
Yeah, okay. There's a few that are pretty much all the craters you can see in a small telescope have been named after scientists, astronomers, all that kind of stuff. And I'm terrible at remembering any of them. But
Well, I think that one stands out pretty well during the full moon as well. Tycho and Copernicus would be another favorite.
Yeah.
That is revealed right through the moon cycle pretty well. So
Yeah.
when you're into a gibbous moon or into a waning gibbous moon, doesn't matter, but a full moon really reveals it nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. So over here, we have the Sea of Tranquility up on the left side there, and that's the Apollo 11 landing site, the first landing site. And one of the things people often ask, well, can you see the moon landers? Can you see the flag and the footprints and stuff like that? Well, no, there's no telescope in the world that could possibly see something that small at that distance. And even if your telescope could, you'd be looking at it through all this atmosphere and you see all the rippling and stuff like that. I mean, I think the smallest thing you can resolve on the moon is a crater about 1 kilometer across. Anything smaller than that, I don't think you can really easily see from Earth. But there's lots of craters of that size. So let's see here. Just adjust the contrast a little bit here. It's a little dark. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so the computer that is outside is becoming very slow to respond to any user inputs. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to have it last throughout. If it does go down, I will stop the broadcast, start it again from my phone, and just run outside and put the phone into the eyepiece, and we'll watch it that way. So that'll be the backup. But let's see here. Yeah, we'll go to that one for a little while, and folks can just look at that. Go ahead.
You were mentioning about craters larger than 1 kilometer, or craters around 1 kilometer in size. Apparently, there are 1.3 million craters larger than 1 kilometer in diameter on the moon.
Wow, that's not something you'll ever run out of looking at then, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's people will. You get into astronomy. You start off with maybe binoculars or the unaided eye, and then you get a small telescope. And almost always, what happens is you either decide you love this and you upgrade your telescope, or you say, "Oh, that was kind of cool," and then you move on to something else, which is totally legit as well. But people rarely wring everything that they can out of their telescope before they upgrade. I mean, there are literally so many things to see that I don't think many people really see all the stuff they can before they move up to another telescope, because the prices of telescopes have come down so much in the last little while that you can actually afford a fairly good sized telescope for not too much money.
Agreed. Yeah, that's true. And no, the objects that you might take a look at, the moon and a few planets, you might consider that might be targets that are the top targets. But really, when you start looking at things like the Orion Nebula or the Pleiades star cluster or a double set of galaxies in your eyepiece at the same time, they can all add to so much more beauty as well. Like not just planets and the moon. It's not just for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if I can just bring this up a little bit more too. There we go. So I mentioned I have one of those Star Blast scopes, and I've got this little 3-inch that we're using here. I also have a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope, which was my dream telescope. The planetarium became an Orion dealer for a number of years, and basically the first thing that I did was, use my staff discount to order that baby. And it's a lovely scope. It's beautiful, and the views through it are amazing. But it's just so big and heavy that I just don't pull it out except for special occasions. Like when I used to go to star parties, or you travel to, say, Saskatchewan, or there's one in Spruce Woods in the park here every year, and things like that. I would bring it along for that, but the rest of the time it just sits in the garage, and it's just so much easier to use these smaller ones. And yet, people that have smaller telescopes are always thinking, "Oh, I wish I had a bigger telescope." So clearly the only answer is to have all the telescopes like you've got there.
Well, yeah, if you're loud.
Yeah.
MD guy is mentioning, hopefully this is not a stupid question. Couldn't a telescope be inside and view through a window? Or would it get a reflection? No, actually what happens, MD guy, is that you've got another piece of glass in your path of light. So you're obstructing your view that much more. And so that light that's trying to penetrate through the window and into your optics is being diffracted and reflected and bounced around, I'll say.
Yeah.
As it tries to reach your optics. So you want to have the least amount of pieces of glass in front of your optics as possible.
Yeah.
So your view wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, you might think, well, you can open the window, but then what happens is all the hot air from the inside of your house is going out the window, and you're creating your own turbulence and your own heat waves and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yet, having said that, there's a couple of folks that I've seen. I know, I think it's Kevin Fetter out in the East. Does a lot of stuff through his condo window because that's his only opportunity to observe, and he actually gets some pretty impressive images and sketches and things like that. And one of our local folks, Stan Clausen, he got a telescope for his birthday that we announced on the show. Told him where to go get it, and he used it through the window because it was just frigid night like tonight, and it's surprising that you can get, I mean, you're right, it's not as good, but sometimes, observing through a window versus going outside and getting frostbite, it might be worth trying.
That's perfectly good to do.
Yeah. And I remember when I was a kid, when I first started, I didn't have a telescope yet, but I had my dad's 7x35 binoculars, and I would sit in our living room because we had these, it was, my parents decorated in the 70s. We had these red lights over the fireplace. So I turned those on so I could read my star charts, my night watch. And then I'd look through the window with binoculars in the winter and try and track stuff down because it was just too cold.
Absolutely.
All right.
And also with observing, you're not really moving a whole lot, so you're really not generating a whole lot of heat either.
That's true.
You have to dress for about 10 degrees colder than it really is.
Yeah, it is not an aerobic activity, that's for sure. Okay, I'm just going to go and take a peek at the prediction of the moon and the occultation so that I have the camera pointed at the right spot for when Mars starts to emerge. So I'm going to take a look. I'm using a program called Stellarium. I think I can flip that over onto the, let's see, I think I've got a setting for that. There we go, yeah. So Stellarium is probably the best resource out there. It's a free piece of software that is basically a full featured planetarium for your desktop. You set the location, the date and the time, and it then shows you everything in the sky to whatever level of detail you want. So you can zoom in on the Pleiades star cluster, and I have it set to show a bunch of asteroids because that happens to be one of my interests. So I've got all the asteroids figured out in where they are and stuff like that. Has everything, and it is just an amazing program, and it's free. So stellarium.org is the place to grab it. They do have an app if you're more interested in using it on your phone. The app costs $20. So I wound up getting the app. I never use it, but I figured I've got more than $20 worth out of Stellarium, so I felt I should pay them something. Let's see. So I'm just going to set our time here for, first of all, there. We're just going to advance a few minutes. I'm going to take away my realistic landscape from my backyard that has all the trees and go to a more, yeah, suddenly you can see things, hey? So it doesn't work 100% in terms of exact positions, but it'll give us at least a sense of where things are going to be. So we're going to be sort of right by that crater over there. So I'm going to go and set the telescope over there, and we're just going to keep it in the appropriate spot so that we can watch the emergence of Mars, which is in about a little bit less than 10 minutes. And hopefully, if our predictions are accurate and I point the telescope accurately, we'll get to see Mars emerge from behind the moon as the moon moves past it and uncovers it. Let's see here. There's that.
The best bet with those trees is really to invite your neighbor over and show him 2 telescopes on night.
You know, that's a very good point, and I have in fact done that. I didn't point out exactly how critical those particular trees are. They're like, if you're going to have trees, they're pretty much the worst place to have them for where I set up my telescope. Now I could move my telescope, but then I have less of a sky visible. So it's always a bit of a trouble. But when I lived in the States, a friend of mine had built a observatory on his property, and he had let me just get this tracking here. He had a certain area that he couldn't really see very well, part of the sky, but it was like, oh, it's just a small part of the sky. And then Comet Hyakutake and Comet Hale-Bopp were discovered, and it turned out that they were both going to be basically in that same kind of area. So he started cutting trees down until his family said, no, you got to move them. So he wound up moving trees around in his yard to make an appropriate view for the comet of the century back in 1997. Let's get back to our scope view here. And make sure there. The other thing that I think, or I know has happened, is that the camera has rotated in the fitting. The cables are so cold that they're sort of tugging on the camera and making it sort of pull, even though there's lots of slack there just because they're frozen so solid. And so up and down is not up and down when I press the buttons on the telescope. So that's why there's quite a bit of problem driving here. Okay. So what we're looking for is that Mars will appear sort of in this area. Not sure exactly where, but basically along that part of the moon's limb, and it will just start to appear in the as the moon is moving essentially to the left in this image, and it will be left behind. We might not see it instantly, but once it starts appearing there, it'll take probably half a minute or so to be fully uncovered. And once it's fully uncovered, you should be able to see it with the unaided eye pretty easily, and certainly in a pair of binoculars. So if you're going to be watching with binoculars, now's the time to get your jacket back on and get back out there, because you don't want to miss it. We are about 4.5 minutes away from the re-emergence of Mars behind the moon, from behind the moon.
The CNB guy was asking, what is the app you use? I missed it. It's called Stellarium. I believe that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Stellarium, absolutely. It's stellarium.org is the website for it, and that'll lead you to the software version as well as the online app version. And there is actually a web version as well, so you don't have to download anything. You can just run it in the web version. Just tweak the focus a little bit there. Still a lot of turbulence. Now I'm trying to watch carefully to see if I can see the Mars re-emerge in that part of from behind the moon. We're still still 3 minutes away, plus or minus.
So to have the moon occult Mars when the moon is full, and when Mars is at opposition, that must be fairly rare, I guess.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, there have been Mars occultations fairly regularly, but to see it at opposition is rare because we only have oppositions every 26 months or so. So I had somebody asking if the alignment gives any kind of gravitational effect or things like that, and there really isn't. I mean, the distance of Mars, the gravity is so small that it doesn't have any effect whether the moon is in front of it or not. The moon, of course, has a gravitational effect on the Earth. We have the tides and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, at opposition, everything being lined up like that is very uncommon. Let's see. That turbulence is just very tough. All right, we'll just adjust the contrast a little bit, see if that will help. Coming up about 2 minutes away from the re-emergence of Mars behind the moon.
I was reading that the last occultation of Mars was in October of 2020, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. So a few years ago.
But the moon wasn't full at the time. It was a waning gibbous moon. So.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I guess that part plays into it too. So I think that's part of the rarity of everything happening here all at once.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and that seems to be the way that events are promoted nowadays. It has to be the biggest or the rarest or the the most unusual since whatever day. And once you add a bunch of criteria, you can definitely make any event sort of be rare. But this one really is kind of a rare one, and it's pretty rare to see a bright object occulted by the moon. There's lots of fainter stars, but something as bright as Mars is. I think I saw Mars occult at Aldebaran once back in the 90s, and that was pretty cool. It was a grazing occultation right along the south pole of the moon, where the star disappeared and reappeared in the mountains and the valleys of the moon, and it was spectacular to see. But it just happened to be in the right spot. It literally went through my backyard, the best place to be.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so we are coming up. We're probably less than a minute away. So again, if you got your binoculars out, keep them trained on there. Don't blink. And we'll be watching for Mars to appear somewhere near the center of the screen, right in about this area. Oh, is that it? Up here? I think that is it. Reappearing behind.
That's it.
That's it there. And we can see it in the other image, in the binocular image, which is a little bit too high for you guys to see, I think. But there it is coming out. Okay, no, you can see it there. There it is.
Nice.
Yeah, and
Well done.
I forgot to hit the record button, but that's okay. Kind of reminds me of the Earthrise picture that we just saw from Artemis, with the, Earth coming up from behind the moon from the spacecraft orbit.
Absolutely.
Here we've got Mars coming up because of the motion of the moon, and I don't know. Mars doesn't look nearly as hospitable as that blue Earth did coming up from behind the moon. All right, so we've had a successful occultation of the planet Mars by the moon. You can already see how much space there is, even in the binocular view here. Mars is very distinct from the limb of the moon already. If you watched it visually, I would love to hear your description. If you saw it sort of fade in or pop out very suddenly, or if you were able to see the emergence of Mars, drop us a line. You can always reach us at space@manitobamuseum.ca, or you can hit us up, of course, on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you happen to be watching us, and send us your descriptions. If you did take pictures or anything like that, we'd love to feature them on Dome at Home, which is tomorrow night. The one that we postponed from last week is going to run tomorrow evening at 7. So if you're around and you want to join us, we'll be back here at 7 o'clock Central Time for Dome at Home. We're going to be taking a look at the winter constellations, and we'll also be taking a look at some of the other planetary images that people have been collecting over the last little while. Jupiter and Mars have both been spectacular targets, and we'll share some of those, as well as all the cool space stuff to do with the Artemis mission. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Special thanks to our guest Chris Kerwin from Sunday Night Astronomy Show. Make sure you check out his show. Thanks a lot for joining us, Chris.
It's been a pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And we'll do this again. Next time, I'm sure it'll be you guys that have the clear skies. So we'll hook up with you. All right. Everybody have a great night. Get out there. It's still nice and clear. Dress nice and warm. Take a look at the sky. And we will see you tomorrow night for another edition of Dome at Home. Good night, everybody. And we're clear.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was above and beyond the call of duty there. You you pulled it out of the fire.
No, I had fun. That's you got to stay relaxed.
Yeah, that's exactly it. All righty. Well, I'll What's that?
I say from an always introvert to this, yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh man. Okay, well, I'll talk to you soon, and hopefully I'll see you on Sunday.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no
Take
problem.
care.
Okay, cheers. Bye.